in China, like in the United States, the severity of potential punishments for stealing depend on the value of the goods that are taken. And here, if he in fact is guilty, he stole from a Louis Vuitton store, which, as we know, features high value items. So that's bad news for him because that could mean a potential punishment as long as 10 years of prison. But that's, of course, the outlier. And I don't, that I mention that number with a great deal of hesitation because he's not going to get 10 years in prison. And in fact, he might not get any prison time. There's a great deal of discretion for the government in China. And given the optics of this, given my instinct is that China probably doesn't want to turn this into, sending him to prison for some length of time. But it is potentially serious if, in fact, he's guilty.
How could the players fight this? I mean, can they handle this among their own lawyers, or do officials from the United States have to get involved?
Well, in China, the conviction rate is over 99%. So they're going to need some help.
Wow.
And the most likely help, will be through the American consulate. The nearest consulate will provide political advice in terms of talking to prosecutors, talking to the government. President Trump is in China. So I mean, the timing of this is interesting in that certainly if the president were to make an issue of this and say, could they be treated with some leniency, that would play an important role. So in terms of hiring a lawyer and trying to be found not guilty, the odds aren't very good. In terms of involving political actors, whether they're the State Department or from the White House, to me, that's a more likely to yield benefit.
Is there any way China's passion for basketball could help LiAngelo in this case?
Yeah, Robin, I think it might. I think China knows that it has relationships with the NBA. It has relationships with basketball in general. We know that the big baller brand wants to expand into China. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why the government may not want to impose a very onerous punishment on him and the other players, given that there is an attempt to cultivate a relationship between the country and American basketball. But, there's a lot we're not seeing, right? We don't know what the prosecutor thinks. There are all sorts of persons in this story that we have no familiarity of that could play a pretty decisive role.